It's Sunday, January 12th, 2024. You're watching Co-op for Two. My name is Jesse Reichler, and today we are continuing our playthrough of Improv New York Noir, a custom bespoke case that's being written for us week by week by a viewer, Matt, who's in the channel with us today. And last week was my favorite letter we've gotten. It sort of blew the doors off the whole case. Actually, it's happened twice now in this case. But before I talk about it, let me remind you that if you haven't been following along with us for the previous weeks, you should not be here now. It won't make any sense. You need to start at the beginning with letter number 1. So we'll talk a little bit before we recap about general stuff, and then you should leave if you haven't been following along. So let's do some bookkeeping first. Recent videos that went up on the channel, I just posted the review of Star Trek Cryptic, which is behind me here. A game I liked quite a bit, wanted to love it, didn't quite make the... didn't quite get up to that top tier status, but you'll have to watch the review to find out why. And I did record a review of Hunt to Killer Wealth of Murder that'll be up in the next day or two. And a couple more reviews that are pending. One of Razorhurst Blood Alley, one of the Winter Trilogy Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective fan cases. If you are a Patreon supporter of this channel, you can see those early. For the rest of you, they'll be up in the next week or two. What else do we need to talk about? If you're interested in writing a case for New York Noir, a more traditional Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective style case, I am going to be recording a tutorial on using the online tools for Casebook, the language I wrote to help you make cases for New York Noir. And I did want to show you a little update of tools before we start. So you've seen the fingerprint directory, which is fairly recent new addition. I think I've shown this before. a little, in the beginning, you've got a little tutorial on how to use fingerprints, and then you've got two sections. The first section is organized by fingerprint class. You've got 6 different classes. This isn't the full directory, just a little bit of it. So if you found a fingerprint somewhere, you'd first classify it, and then you try to find it. Then you try to find it in this area. If you knew the number, or if you were given a suspect's number, this is the 10 fingerprints for these different suspects. So there's overlapping, there's 2 parts to the fingerprint directory duplicated, depending on how you need to access it. And this is something like 80 pages, but this is just a sample. So this one I've shown before. What is brand new this last week or so, with the help of one of the viewers of this channel, Grayson, we've been working on this criminal history directory. Again, this is an extra directory that will be part of the New York Noir system that case authors could use if they wanted to. And so we have a little bit of introduction talking about how the directory is organized and can be used. And then basically you've got a couple thousand criminals that are listed here. You've got their lead, the age, male or female, ethnicity, height, weight, prominent tattoo, alias, where they were last known to reside, either what neighborhood or occasionally what borough. If they're outside of Manhattan, occasionally you'll get someone who's from another state. How many years they spent in jail. So here's one who's been in jail for 13 years, repeat offender, felony, violent felonies, last arrested for armed assault. So basically you've got general pattern of, are they a petty criminal? Do they work for organized crime, repeat offender, professional criminal? And then what kinds of crimes they tend to have been arrested for, and then their last crime. And whether they're in custody, free, deceased. Occasionally you'll get someone who's actually wanted. So the idea is that authors could make use of this directory in a case. Maybe a witness sees someone in their early 20s, tall, then maybe you'd have to go through here and you'd be looking for someone over 6 foot tall in their 20s. And then you might try to use what you can to narrow down to a couple suspects. Then you'd look up these leads in your case book with your suspect. Maybe they found a suspect in their early 20s with an anchor on their tattoo. Well, that would be easy to locate. You'd say this French guy, 5'9", is probably your guy. Last seen in the Lenox Hill neighborhood, petty criminal. You would look up that lead in the case book of the case you're playing, and there you might find the person's name and additional history, and then you might look them up in the white pages, etc. So whether this will ever be used by an author, a case author, whether someone can figure out clever ways to use it. Again, this is just 20 pages of it, but there's actually a couple thousand entries. I started a post on Board Game Geek about this directory. If you have ideas, things that could be added, or additional ways it could be used, I'd love to hear it. I'm hoping that some of these tools will fall into the hands of someone who can figure out creative ways to use it. What else? So let's talk about where we are in today's case, New York Noir Improv, we're calling it. Before I do a recap of where we are, we should say that I believe this will be our last chance to submit something, and then we'll get one little conclusion epilogue letter next week. The week after that, I will do an update on New York Noir Game Design Diary, and then we'll be back to Dear Holmes. So let's talk about where the case left off last week. Where are my files here. So our last letter, I'm not going to do as long a recap as I did last time, but here was our last set of letters. Did I already check in with the chat? How is everyone doing? I think I forgot to even check in. Hopefully I haven't been talking to myself here. Got the normal gang. YouTube says 19 viewers, 4 likes. I see Matt is here. Debbie Levy helped with the editing of this week, but says she missed out on one. She wasn't shown one piece of it. So what happened last week? Well, last week we got a pretty amazing letter. And before we started reading our letter last week, I said, I'm kind of suspicious of Jimmy Cunningham, Michael Launt's friend. Remember, the whole case started with Michael Lant and this card game, and then it led to a murder of the people Michael Lant, our client, has been sort of feuding with. The guy, Michael Lant, and his wife seem to have been killed in arson attack, and Michael Lant has been arrested. And we sort of narrowed down our theory to this financial crime, possibly involving Hamoud, but Hamoud is just killed. And I said before we opened last week's letter that I was starting to develop some real suspicion about Jimmy Cunningham, Michael Lant's friend. Not that we had any evidence directly pointing to Cunningham, but there was something a little bit fishy about how helpful he was being. But we really didn't have much to go on, but we did send Alice over to him. And Alice is our 15-year-old daughter of Wiggins, and she's clearly our favorite detective. And what happened in last week's letter is we got basically the whole Jimmy Cunningham angle got lined up perfectly, and we figured out some very clever stuff. But if we take a look at it, what did we ask? What did we ask be done? So last week, we finally got our hard-boiled guy to go talk to our client to try to get an alibi, get the story from him, and figure out some information. We finally called in the pro after there was this arson murder. We sat our alcoholic cop out. We had our main guy follow up a couple leads we weren't that sure about. Alice, we said, go talk to Jimmy Cunningham. And we asked Wiggins to look into the arson investigation and the murder. Okay, well, exactly as we predicted, we got evidence that someone is trying to frame our client. Fingerprint on a playing card left at the scene of the arson. That's exactly what we predicted would happen. We did also predict that we had a very clever observation about dirt being disturbed around where footprints were found, and we wondered if someone maybe was planting footprints and then covering up their own, and sure enough, footprints matching shoes found in Michael Lant's apartment. So full attempt to frame up Michael Lant. Gas canisters found confirming it's arson. We asked to talk to the arson investigators to see if they could get any clues, and they said there was rope found and certain nearby hardware stores might carry it. When I reread it, I realized we missed an opportunity to search Jimmy Cunningham's house for a hammer. So in our letter last week, we said we arranged for a break-in of Cunningham's house to try to find various evidence of the arson, including the rope, smoky clothes, whatever. But I realize now that we should have noticed this part, window broken outside with a hammer. We should have asked our guy to look for that hammer. Maybe he's smart enough to find it on his own. We'll see. We can ask for some advice on the stock market. Okay, so Alice goes and talks to Cunningham, and she doesn't like him that much. And she notices, she makes a comment about his cologne is bothering her. He lives in the same apartment building as our guy, Michael Lant. Already our suspicions are up. And then he sort of initially saying, well, it's probably true, Michael Mott probably did it. She has to talk him into defending his friend. And then he starts asking her about who she talked to. Like, all of our suspicions started really getting raised here. On her way out, she runs into Mrs. Lant, who's bringing the baby to visit Cunningham because Cunningham wants to talk to her about something. Alice asks her about it. She says, now's not the right time. In the middle of last week's letter, we had this great aha moment where we realized, holy shit, Jimmy Cunningham has put on cologne because the wife of our client is coming over. And that's why he's a bit thrown off. He says, I wasn't expecting a young lady come in. So like it all clicked in that he's in love with Michael Lant's wife, which is why he stands to gain from framing Michael Lant. I still think it's a combination of coveting Michael Lant's wife, but also being involved in this financial crime. Then our guy went and followed up some basic leads that we don't think are that important. Then our top investigator gets into the police to see Michael Lant, who gives us his alibi. He was going up to his office to search through the records of the trades that he's investigating, and you can kind of see him working at his upstairs office in the bank. So maybe our theory is that Cunningham could see he was going to be up there all night and didn't have an alibi, and that was a good time to break in and steal the shoes. We're told that Cunningham has an emergency key to Lant's apartment, so he could have easily gotten the shoes that he used to frame them. I mean, it all clicked in. And our guy even asks about Cunningham, and he says, oh, those are the only two people who have keys, and he's been a friend. He's been making copies of ticker tape. Now, I don't think we paid enough attention to this, because this was the other thing I made a note of when I was rereading this. Lant, our client, says, he told me about the rumors Hamoud was spreading about me. So we think he was sort of setting up this rivalry, maybe lying about it. He's the one who started this feud. But he also says he's been making copies of ticker tape for me to study after work. So he could be falsifying the ticker tape that our client is looking through. I do think that's a possible further proof. Like if we go to the police and we're going to tell them things to look for, one of the things we might look at is whether the ticker tape that Cunningham has been given to our client, Michael Lant, is actual copies of the real ticker tape, or whether he's been falsifying them to throw our guy off the scent. And then, as if we needed more confirmation, we told our top detective to go press the homicide cop investigating our client and ask him. I specifically said, see if you can get the detective to tell you who initially spurred on the investigation of Lant, because we know Lant was being investigated before the arson. And my theory was that someone was trying to get him in trouble early. And sure enough, when our top investigator presses his contact, they say, I can't do that. And he says, I'm calling in this favor. And he says, okay, I'm going to tell you who gave us the early information pointing at your client. It was his coworker, Cunningham. He gave me the motive, a timeline, and a list of witnesses to back it up. So 100% this guy, I mean, that we don't need anything more. This guy who's supposed to be his friend was actually the guy who early on was anonymously leaking to the police details to get him in trouble. So we 100% are convinced that Cunningham is at the heart of all this with a double motive. We're not 100% sure who else is involved. We haven't figured out a great way to alibi our client, Michael Vaughn, but I'm not sure if we're going to be able to solve that part. Now, what did we ask be done this week? This is the reply we're going to get. Let's just quickly review what we asked for. First of all, we sent our top guy to go lean on Mrs. Lant. There was some doubt in the channel about whether there was an affair still ongoing, whether there was ever an affair, or whether Cunningham was just trying to get with her. And we thought, okay, there's one person who will be able to figure it out. It's Jackie Hardball. So we said, you go lean on Mrs. Lant, get her to confess she had an affair with him, make sure it's not still ongoing, find out what Cunningham has told us. They just had a meeting where Cunningham wanted to talk to her, so she's going to have good information for us. But we said, don't go there yet, because we finally hired our burglar that we haven't used yet, and we asked him to break into Cunningham's house to see if he could get evidence for us. We told him to look for the rope, the gas canisters, receipts. I wish we had told him to look for a hammer with signs of glass on it. I don't know how good the police can find the glass back in the 40s, but it would have been nice if we asked them for it. We also asked for financial records of trades, because I'm fairly convinced that he's still doing some illegal financial trades involving borrowing stocks and selling them when they drop. So we told him all these things to look for. We know Jimmy Cunningham was acting weird, looking around his living room when Alice came in, so I told him look around there. But we did say, look, it's important that you not be detected, because we don't want to spook Cunningham. So there's that. And we think Cunningham is responsible for the arson death of this family, so he's dangerous. And then our main detective, Roger Vernon, we wanted him to go canvass the hardware stores, see if anyone remembers Jimmy Cunningham coming in to buy rope, gas canisters, etc. We asked if Alice could join him, even though it's breaking the rules a little bit about Alice on a school day, but we asked maybe she can come. If she can't come, at least get her to give a description. And here it is. Here we are asking Alice to do two things. First of all, we sent her to visit Victor Hamoud, the son of the couple that got burned alive in the arson, or at least burned up in the arson, and explain that our client is innocent and see what you could find out for him. Now, we're not 100% sure that he's not in on it, or even that the Hamouds faked their own death. That seems very far-fetched. But anyway, so that's where we sent Alice, and then we asked, if you can, go join Roger when you canvass these hardware stores. And then for Wiggins, we laid out our basic theory of the case and what we expect him to be able to tell the police. So we said we asked him to let Alice join for the hardware stores. He asked for financial advice. We told him basically pull the cash you need out of the market, but the long-term stuff, just leave. Okay, and then we gave him a little rundown of our theory and what we expect to be able to tell the police. We think there's a good chance we'll find Cunningham's fingerprints on the shoes that we think were stolen from Lant's house and then planted. We suspect Cunningham won't have an alibi. We gave him the motives. And we suggested eventually you may be able to get some of the people involved in a financial crime with working with Cunningham to flip on him if we pressured them and threatened them with indicting them for the arson murder, because we don't think the rest of them were involved in that. So that's what we sent out as our request. And the notes I made for myself were about the hammer, the ticker tape. That's probably another piece of evidence we're going to tell the cops to try to look at. We're not 100% sure who else is working with Cunningham. I suspect Hamoud was his partner and he's killed Hamoud. That's my theory, but we don't have any good evidence about it. And we should try to figure out if we can alibi Lant. Now, I don't think we're going to have a good alibi because he was up in his office working alone on a night when no one else would be there. So I'm not sure we're going to have a good way to alibi him, but maybe we'll keep an eye open for that. All right, is there anything else to talk about before I open up today's letter? Anything I've missed? Anything anyone wants to get on the record before we open up this letter? So actually, there's two letters today, but one main one, and I'll show you the next one as we get there. Anna says good weekend. Okay. So we've got a big stack of letters this week. They keep getting longer. So we'll have one more short conclusion letter epilogue after this week. But this week is our last big chance. But boy, it's quite a bit here for us to get through. All right, let's see what we got. Just trying to clean up a little bit here. Okay, from Wiggins. Dear Mr. Reichler, I'm glad we both made a small profit on this case. I lost nearly everything this week. I couldn't even get into the bank on Thursday, so it would have been too late to do anything. There was a mad rush to pull everything out. That's the Wall Street crash, 1929. Whatever I had invested is gone by now. I'm staying positive, though. I had nothing when I got here, so let's just say I broke even. I have to wonder, though, we spent so much time investigating bankers and stockbrokers. Did any of them know? As much as I wanted to refuse your request for Alice to spend more time on this case, I think it was good for her to get out of the house this week. I haven't told her about what happened yet. Alice is even smarter than I've given her credit for. I think we should increase her rate next time. I sent her along with Roger to search for that hardware store. They figured out which store it was, but as these things go, it was the last one they visited. Alice found something interesting this week. I attached it to the end of the letter. We've reached the end of our case. If you could summarize your findings in a letter and submit it to me, I'll pass it along to Detective Cohen and implore him to release Michael Lant. I'll also pass along anything relevant to Lant's employer. Hopefully we can uncover additional evidence that will help him get his life back. Jackie Hardboil assured me that if we hand the real killer to Cohen on a silver platter, he'll do the right thing, but the burden is on us. We need a rock-solid argument with evidence to back it up. I'll let you know how it all turns out next week. All right, so we spent everything. We got $6 profit here. All right, at least we didn't go overboard. All right, that's Wiggins. And now we've got Alice. All right, here we go. Let's see how Alice did. Dear Mr. Reichler, I knew that guy was trouble. Dad told me to stay away from Jimmy's building, so he must be the guy who did it. I interrogated a murderer. Just so you know, this is a big step in my detective career. I still don't know why Mrs. Lant was acting so weird, though. Dad said I'll figure it out when I'm older. I went to the West Street Hotel to find Victor Hamoud. I went later in the day so he'd be there. I asked the front desk if they could call for him. I'm a detective. Are you the detective? Victor asked skeptically. Don't you have homework? My homework is justice. Sorry, I'm actually really glad someone came. No one will listen to me, Victor said. What do you mean no one will listen? Haven't the police talked to you? I asked. Yes, but there's just a lot I want them to see. They keep telling me they already caught the killer, but it was so quick. I just wish they'd take this more seriously, even if it is solved. My parents deserve that. I've been going through my father's office and I'm finding strange documents. I don't understand what they mean, but I didn't really understand his work either. I can show you if you're interested. Of course I want to see the mysterious documents. Let's go. He called us a cab and we headed over to American Family Insurance. I tried to get a little more info on the ride over. What was your father like? I asked. Well, we were close for most of my life, but he became consumed by his career. When the director asked him to move to Manhattan, he said yes right away. My parents both moved out here, and I stayed behind in Wisconsin. He offered to get me a job in his new office, but I wasn't ready to pack up and leave my life behind. I'm getting married next year. That's a long trip. Were you already on your way over here? No, I left right away when I heard the news. Long-distance trains are fast nowadays. I'm learning a lot about them, actually. The trip only took 2 days. There was a lull. Then Victor asked who hired me. Okay, hear me out, I explained. But I was actually hired by Michael Lott. We don't think he did it. We're trying to figure out who did, but we need more evidence. Hamoud was a little taken aback, but sat with it for a moment. All I know is you're the first person who's actually tried to figure it out. It's been a long week and I need some closure before I return to Wisconsin. I don't care who hired you. I want to know what happened. We arrived at American Family Insurance and went straight up to Hamoud's office. He started searching through his father's desk and filing cabinets. Do you mind if I look around? I asked. Not at all. It was a boring, insurance-y office. There was a desk in the middle of the room with a typewriter on it, some filing cabinets against the wall, and a few papers scattered about. I looked through the drawers while Victor was going through the filing cabinet, and I found a deck of playing cards. I quickly opened and leafed through all the cards. It would have been pretty amazing if the King of Hearts was missing. Unfortunately, all of the cards were there. Okay, here's what you need to see, Victor said. He drew my attention to weird messages written in some foreign language. We both stared at it, but neither of us could make sense of it. Each page had a couple of sentences and some numbers and letters scribbled in the corner. Playing card ranks. Each message has a set of 3 ranks. My father played cards a lot. I don't know much about the game he played, but the police told me the killer was someone who played cards with him. I tried to show this to them. I've typed it all up for you on one page. I took the transcribed message from Victor. There's one more thing, Victor continued. I inherited my father's estate, and it's unusual. I learned he actually owes stocks to someone. I need to return several stocks of New York Central Railroad, but my father doesn't even own these stocks. I found out about it because I received a call on Thursday from Dean Kimmel, a friend of my father. He called right after the crash to bring it to my attention and wanted to make sure I knew to repurchase these stocks right away. He said it was a complicated but carefully planned arrangement, and my father would have wanted him to help me follow through on it. I thanked Victor Hamoud and brought the mysterious secret code home to Dad. I wanted to solve it, but Dad made me work on my actual homework. I thought I was done for the week, but Dad asked if I wanted to spend a day with Roger Vernon following some more leads. I don't know what you said, but thank you. I'll let him tell you about it. This has been a lot of fun. I'm definitely going to do this full time when I finish school. My dad used to tell me stories about Sherlock Holmes. They were always really exciting, but the guy always sounded like a know-it-all. I'm going to be the most humble detective of all time. Just you wait and see. So long for now, Alice. Okay, pretty good. So let's just go over this part. This whole thing here about borrowing the stocks, he owes them and he has to buy them back because he owed them back. This is how you profit. This is the whole system of profit. Nothing illegal on the face of it. You borrow the stocks while they're high valued. You sell them. You expect them to drop, which they have. The whole market has crashed. When they drop in value, you repurchase them and you give them back. It feels like a scam, but on the face of it, as a general principle, it's not a scam and it's done regularly. You believe they'll drop in value, so you buy them, you borrow them, virtually borrow them, promising to pay them back in a month. You sell them, You expect them to drop in value. When they do, you repurchase them and then you give them back. So you pay a little bit of money to borrow them, but because you were correct that they were going to drop in value, you've profited. Now, if they don't drop in value, you lose a lot of money because you've now got to repurchase them at a higher price and then pay them back. So it costs you money to borrow, and your miscalculation meant you had to spend more, so you lose money. But it's a way to leverage and make a huge profit without using any of your real money, because it just costs you a small amount to borrow them, if you're right. But the question is, how did they know? How did Hamoud know that the stock was going to drop dramatically in value? And that's where the insider trading might come in. Now, did they know the stock market was going to drop? Probably not. If they did, you probably don't need insider trading information for that. But if they got some advanced knowledge from AT&T or New York Central Railroad, in this case, it's not AT&T, it's New York Central Railroad. So how they would know that would drop, I don't know. But maybe they just had a feeling that the whole market was going to crash. It's only illegal if it was insider information that they had. But we haven't been able to prove that yet. But it's nice that this guy, Dean Kimmel, is telling his friend that, telling the son, clearly the son's not involved, so that's nice. This is a little more troublesome. Each page has a couple of sentences, some numbers and scribbled. So maybe they are passing information about what stocks are going to drop or some insider information. Now, I've typed it all up for you on one page. Where is that page? Is it in our set here somewhere? Yes, I see. Got some blank pages here. I think this is the full document. Might want to check. Well, Matt is here. He'll tell me. But I do see the letter from here. I guess it's at the back. Here are all the transcribed messages. Unfortunately, a few of the lines and numbers were smudged. Take a break and come back to this if you get stuck and frustrated like I did. If you can't figure out how to translate, the library is a great resource and it's free. Found some old reference book in the back covered in cobwebs. Just search the web and I'm sure you'll find something to help speed this up. Search the web in the cobwebs. Search the cobwebs and you'll find. Okay, so this looks to me like maybe we've got a Caesar cipher. Clearly a substitution cipher. We might need to spend some time on it. So there are the card ranks, sometimes smudged. Now, let's just look. If it's a substitution Caesar cipher, and they look like lengths of words. That's what makes us think it's a substitution cipher. English punctuation, English word lengths. So letter for letter. But one, if we look for the single letter words, one interesting thing is whether they're all using the same key or if this is going to be in some way a key. And I can see already it looks to me like we're going to have different keys for each message just based on the frequency of letters. Like you don't see the same. We've got some 3-letter words, some 2-letter words, and they're not the same in each line, which to me suggests like we've got a Caesar cipher with one offset and a Caesar cipher with a different offset. But why do we have 3? I don't know. But this might be, if these are Hamoud's instructions, these could be the proof of the insider trading we know, we are looking for. All right, so like there's a single letter. This is going to be an A or an I. So maybe, but are there any other single letters like I expect? An A or an I, would that be an offset of 11? Let's just, for the fun of it, take a look at this. If it's an A that goes to an S, it's a 19, that doesn't match where the ace would be. 11, 12, 13, 14. What if it's an I? An I, an I goes to an S. It's an offset of 10, which could be a jack. If I goes to an S, a G would be, sorry, if I goes to an S, then a W would go to a G, Y, S goes to I, G goes to W, I goes to Y, T, that doesn't seem right. Well, we'll work on this in a bit. All right, so we might have a cipher to work on here. We'll put this aside and continue. Okay, here's Roger Vernon's report. Dear Mr. Reichler, I went hunting for hardware stores this week. Wiggins told me to stop by his place and pick up my partner, who turned out to be a child prodigy. I could spend this whole letter talking about Alice, but I'll stick to business. We weren't sure which of those 4 hardware stores was the most likely to have seen our killer. I thought about starting with the closest one, but that seemed too obvious. After some indecisiveness, Alice asked me to pick a number from 1 to 4. After 3 unsuccessful attempts, we arrived at Hardware and Lumber. It was the closest of the 4 to the crime scene. Should have trusted my instincts, but I managed to outsmart myself. Promise you, as unlikely as it seems, we just got lucky. Alice had this idea about an arm sling and a car accident. But I convinced her it was easier to just tell the clerk about the arson and ask for help. I think she was disappointed. I explained the situation to the clerk at Hardware and Lumber, and Alice described what Jimmy Cunningham looked like. That's why we wanted to send Alice. There was an odd guy who came here a few weeks ago to buy some rope, the clerk said. A lot of us in the neighborhood know each other, but he was a new customer. I tried to make some small talk and asked him if he worked in construction. He just looked at his watch and asked how much the rope was and paid and left. Didn't even take his hat off. What kind of hat? Was he wearing a coat? Alice asked. Her face lit up a little. Oh, I'm not quite sure, he said. He did have a heavy trench coat on. I remember that. It was a bland coat, gray or black. I'd know it if I saw it. I got a sharp memory. Get me a lineup, he joked. That was enough for me. I walked Alice home and got back to the gym. Wiggins said, you're wrapping up this case soon. I hope you nail the guy. It was a pleasure working with you. Best of luck to you, friend. All right, so not that much information, but he seems like he's wearing the outfit that Alice saw the guy wearing that was watching the Lant House. Remember when she came out of the Lant House, she saw this guy and she followed him a little bit? All right, this is not the area I wanted to highlight. The part about the trench coat. Surprised Alice didn't remark on that. But he says, get me a lineup. So that's our cue, right? Like that's what we're going to suggest, that they get this guy that we actually do get him in front of a lineup and see if he can pick out Cunningham. All right, and then we've got Jackie Hardboil, a guy who we told to visit Lant, to visit Mrs. Lant. Let's see how this goes. This could be rough. Dear Mr. Reichler, when Mr. Lant told me about the wife and the friend, I smelled trouble. Arson isn't the kind of thing you do when the milkman leaves sour milk. It's personal. Whoever did this wanted to send a message. Whatever that message was, I needed to talk to the person on the other end of the line. That meant paying a visit to Mrs. Lant. You already put two and two together, but I needed to see for myself whether this dame was a hapless victim or a double-crossing viper. I knocked on the door of the Lant home when I knew she'd be around and introduced myself. Jackie Hardboil, private investigators. Your friends called in the big guns. Your husband is innocent. I need to know who his enemies are and why they're his enemies. May I come in? Yes, of course. Thank you for your help, she said in awe. We took a walk over to her parlor. Just whisper, please, if you don't mind. Susan's sleeping in the other room. How do you like your coffee? She asked. I drink it black, Mrs. Lant. I gave her a minute and continued when she poured me a mug. I paid a visit to your husband last week. He had a lot of interesting things to say about you, about Jimmy. I heard the mug rattle. What about Jimmy? That's where I thought maybe you could help. I gave it a moment. If you're referring to last week, I was a little uncomfortable that Alice asked me about him. It was an odd thing to ask, that's all. Do all men make you a little uncomfortable, Mrs. Lant? Or just Mr. Cunningham? I didn't blink. If you're implying what I think you're implying, I'll need to ask you to leave, Mr. I'm the guy who's going to get your husband out of this, Mrs. Lant. But if I'm going to do that, I need your full cooperation. We both know your husband spends a lot of late nights at the office. If I was going to play with fire, I'd need to start with a little smoke. I pulled out a couple of spuds and gave her a light. I have a little girl too, you know, but I always make it home for dinner. If I spend most of the week sleeping somewhere else, missing out on Mrs. Hardboil's delicious pot roast, it wouldn't shock me if Mrs. Hardboil wanted to serve that pot roast to somebody else. For all she knows, her husband's getting takeout at the office, and dinner's getting cold. Oh, it's nothing like that. No? Your husband is in prison, Mrs. Lant, and this man is visiting your home, watching your child, and whispering into your ear. Jimmy Cunningham is a hungry man, and he'll do anything to dine at the Lant residence. Is he letting himself in, or are you ringing the dinner bell? I love my husband. There's no doubt in my mind, Mrs. Lant, no doubt at all. I guess it was Jimmy's idea, but you knew it was wrong, and you had to put a stop to it. Suddenly, it turns out your husband is roasting marshmallows with gasoline, and Jimmy's right there to pick up the pieces. No, that can't be true. She teared up. It finally clicked. He was our friend. How could he do this to him? This is going to be hard, Mrs. Lant, but I need you to walk me through the whole story. It's not too late to exonerate your husband. We both know he wouldn't hurt anyone. You can save him. She put out her cigarette and buried her head in her hands. It started 2 years ago. We had him over for dinner every few months. He was always very kind, interested in me, but he crossed lines when Michael wasn't looking. Every handshake was longer, more sensual. He was touchy. I tried to ignore it, but over time we got closer, and I was lonelier. He kissed me. I didn't stop him. It finally came to an end last year. He started to, well, I'll spare you the details. It was a line I wasn't willing to cross. I still loved Michael. Things actually cooled down after that. He became more like a friend. It was nice. When Susan was born, he offered to help run errands for us. Michael was getting more distant, though, and Jimmy and I were seeing more of each other. It was fine until last week. What happened last week, Mrs. Lant? Well, Jimmy offered to watch Susan while I went to visit Michael. I know it sounds strange, but I trusted him. I thought he respected what I wanted and just wanted the best for all of us. I went over to see him, but he frightened me. He doused himself in awful cologne, lit candles, and told me he was worried about me and Susan, that this was our chance to put Michael behind us and leave. I told him that was a horrible thing to say at a time like this, and he got angry. He shouted at me and told me to get out. I heard dishes breaking on the way out. I let her take a breath, and it was a hell of a story. Does Cunningham still have a key to your home, Mrs. Lant? I asked. Yes, I think so, she said. She was there, but she wasn't. I want you to pack up a few days' worth of clothes, grab Susan, and follow me out. It's not safe here. Like I said, Mrs. Hardball makes a delicious pot roast. We'll lie low for a day, then tomorrow we're going to drive down to the precinct and talk to your husband. He needs to hear this from you, Michelle, not his attorney. You're going to do the right thing because you love him. Jackie Hardboil, P.I. All right. So we sent the right guy to that job because he got the truth out of her. And, sounds like their marriage will survive. All right, we have one more letter to read from the guy we asked to break in. Duddy Brooks. Dear Mr. Riker, you had a job you needed done. The job's done. I won't get into my methods. I checked out that place and made sure I was alone when I did it. Didn't take much time, probably half a day altogether. Could have taken less, but I was careful. We'll skip to the part where I'm looking around. When I got past the door, my instincts told me this was a bad idea. Don't like it when I see something I'm not expecting to see. Looked like a tornado went through this apartment. I figured somebody beat me to it, but a couple minutes in, I realized there wasn't any intention to it. Some ripped pillows, broken dishes, and I think somebody took a swing at the wall. This guy went off the deep end. I took a look at the case notes I got from Wiggins to see if anything in the place lined up. Here's a highlight for you. I went through the closet near the front door, found your gray trench coat. I took a whiff and didn't smell anything smoky. Actually, the coat was spotless. I ruffled through the trash and found a receipt for the Pearl Street laundromat. Rookie mistake. I went through his desk and his files, and there was a lot of Wall Street garbage. I couldn't tell you what it meant. I saw the name Sawyer Hartman come up a lot. Looks like he does a lot of trades for this guy. I found some weird notes on the backside of one of these papers. It was a bunch of names and reminders. Maggie, milk, no sugar. Sawyer, confides in dentist. Maurice, gullible, likes to feel special. Dean, Yankees scores in times. Mason, no friends, needs someone to talk to. No signs of gas canisters or ropes. If it were me, I'd ditch any leftovers and not keep something like that in my home. His hiding place wasn't tough to find. A false wall in the second desk drawer. I found a photograph of a woman. There's somebody next to her, but that part's torn out. I made sure everything was put back as I found it and didn't take anything. What a waste. Well, okay. All right. Well, not the jackpot we hoped. He's clearly in love with Mrs. Lant and has totally lost it when she turned him down. Maybe this is all about a woman. However, what do we have here? Well, It's his information about the people he's manipulating. Like Maggie is our Margaret Layton, the phone operator. And he's just reminding himself that she likes milk, no sugar. And then we've got, this guy is the guy who runs the card game. And then Dean Kimmel, Yankee scores in times. What I don't know what that means. Maurice is gullible, likes to feel special, and then Sawyer Hartman, who's a name from our case. So I'm not sure. Okay, but we found the trench coat. This is going to be the same. So he is going to be the guy who bought the rope and who set the fire. It doesn't smell of smoke, but probably because he's cleaned it at this laundromat. So this might, if we talk to that laundromat, that might be evidence that it did smell of smoke before he brought it in. So make sure I printed out all the pages. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, I do believe we did. Let's see what the channel thinks. I guess he needs to look up the Yankee scores and the times to be able to talk to him about them. So all the info he needs to get close to these people. Yeah, I do think these are all people he's trying to get close to. Like Margaret Layton is the phone operator. So he's just remembering she likes her milk with no sugar. He's trying to cozy up to all these people to get inside information from them. But I think he scores in the times. That's weird. So he's manipulating these people. All right, let's look at our first letter. Let's figure out who these people are. If we can remember from past letters who all these people are. Okay, so Dean Kimmel, Dean here, who likes Yankee scores in the Times, is an investor. So this is one of the card game players. Which one is Maurice? Maurice Hamoud. Oh, there's Hamoud. Maurice is Maurice Hamoud. Okay. And then Sawyer is the other regular. Hartman. Oh, he was the guy. He was the guy who was winning, I believe. Or no, Hartman was the guy who's deliberately losing, I believe. Let me see here. Kimmel and Hamoud always win, and then Hartman is the guy who's seems to be losing. Okay. So he's the guy lots of the correspondence is with. Looks like he does a lot of trades for this guy. Okay, so these are all players in the card game. Other than Michael Lant, these are the other players of the card game. And he's got information about how to get information from them, including Margaret Layton, the phone operator. So does this suggest that our guy here, Cunningham, is just using them all to get insider information and is not working with them? Or is he working with Hartman? Don't seem to have really good evidence either way. Hiding place. Okay. Picture of a woman. Is it really all about women? Well, why don't we? I guess we're going to have to break the message in Hamoud, because if we can figure out, I think the most likely scenario is that he was working with Hamoud and then he had to kill off Hamoud. But we're going to have to break this. We're going to have to break this code in order to understand what Hamoud's role is. Huh. So what might it be? It might be like the first letter is offset by 4, the next letter is offset by 4, the next letter is offset by whatever we're gonna call this king of 14 or something, and that so first letter 4 shift, 5 shift, 12 shift, or 14 shift, and then back to 4 shift. That's one possibility. Or just one of these is used for it. It's going to take us a little while to do this. Okay, Matt says we got, what about this? Matt is telling us we just got this extra letter. Okay, so this just came under our door. Let's see what it says. Partner, have you ever heard of Aladdin from You Know Who? Have you ever heard of Aladdin from Arabian Nights? This guy is down on his luck, so his uncle shows him his cave full of treasure. His uncle says if he goes in there and does a job for him, he'll reward him. But he's not allowed to touch or take anything from the cave. Turns out he wants him to find this magical lamp that grants wishes and give it to him. Lamp's worth a lot more than what he's paying. Aladdin's a sucker. I'm not a sucker and I'm not happy. When you ask someone to do a job, you shouldn't tell them what they can and can't take. I'm a man of my word, so I didn't take any treasure and I got you your lamp, but when I do a job, I expect to get something out of it. It's a professional courtesy. 50 cents is just the price of admission. I'm going to help you out and give you a chance to make everything square. I glean that you're investigating the stock market, and I know you've got your eyes on some rich boys who just made a lot of money off the backs of everyone else. Give me one of them, their full name, their address, and where they work. Put their info in the mailbox across the street and it will get to me. If you do the right thing, half of whatever I find while they're out kissing their girlfriends is yours. Give it to charity if you feel bad about it. If you don't do this, I'm going back to the cave to collect some treasure. Can't say I'll be as careful the second time. You better think fast. You have 5 minutes to decide, starting now. So, yikes. This sounds like the guy we just sent to burgle the place is now wants more from us. That's scary. What are we gonna do about this guy? Where's my Where's my... This is He's made his reference to his 50 cents. That's what Duddy Brooks' unsavory character. He served time for burglary. All right, so Duddy Brooks has just sent us this note. You're investigating the stock market. Oh boy. All right, 5 minutes, but we multiply that by 3 on this channel, so we actually have 15 minutes. 15 minutes. That's how we get game time here. Okay, well, what are we going to do, guys? Are we going to give this guy one of the names? Or is this guy's going to go back to Cunningham's apartment? If you don't do this, I'm going back to the cave to collect some treasure. They're all rich people. They're bound to have stuff to burgle. But what I find, they're out kissing their girlfriend. Well, well, I mean, he's already searched Cunningham's house, and Cunningham is the dangerous guy, but he's our bad guy. But he doesn't have any evidence in that house anymore. So I'd be inclined to just let him go burgle Jimmy's house again. Let him go back and steal from Jimmy Cunningham. He's the bad guy. Ugh, Debbie said, it's not true. The coat and receipt are evidence. The coat and receipt are evidence? Not really. I mean, yes, but actually the real evidence for us is going to be the laundromat remembering that Jimmy brought in a smoky jacket. The actual jacket now has been cleaned. It's not very useful to us. And we have the hardware guy. The thing is, we don't know if we knew one of these other guys was involved in it, then we could give them his name, their name. But as it is now, the rest of the guys could be innocent. I'm not going to give him the name of an innocent guy. Channel wants me to. I say give him Kimley's. Might have something that will help us with the cipher. He was trading the same way as Hamoud. We don't know that anyone else is involved in bad stuff. The rest of them may all be being manipulated. Hmm. Guy at the hardware store said he'd remember the code, or he said he'd remember the guy. Um, There was one guy we didn't like, the guy Hartman at Chase, but I just don't see how we give someone. I just don't see how we give him someone's name. All right. I'm writing the response. Okay, this is the response I'm sending. He's not going to take the coat. He's not going to take the coat. He's looking for money. So this is what I'm telling him, that I'm not prepared to give him the name of someone that I don't know if guilty or not. If he wants to break back into Jimmy Cunningham's place to try to steal treasure and money, good luck. I mean, he's our bad guy, so he can go right in. All right, I'm going to put this in the mailbox next door. We'll get back to our work. I'm not going to be threatened into giving some guy a name to break in. That's a good way to get into trouble. I'm not sending him after Victor's inheritance. We just don't. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And I don't like being pushed around. All right, now let's get back to our job. Debbie, where was the comment about the cipher? I had to decode the cipher to check them. I won't spoil and save you some time. Manual decryption is possible. It would take forever. I wouldn't bother trying. Okay. Harry says, we crossed a line when we had this guy break in. Well, we're going to have to come up with what evidence we tell the police about. I think we've got pretty good evidence. And I think we're going to find his fingerprints on the shoes. And I think the laundromat's going to be able to recognize he brought in the smoky jacket. And the rope hardware store guy is going to be able to pick him out of the lineup. So I feel pretty confident that we can catch Jimmy Cunningham. But we don't know who else was involved. So this, though, might give us the key. It's a Caesar cipher shift of 4. And A goes to D. One, two, three, four. A goes to E. That would mean Z goes to D. I goes That doesn't work. And if it was a 5, it would go to N. That also doesn't work. I mean, Debbie has given us a very cryptic line here about don't do it manually, but that doesn't really help me that much because I'm not sure how to do it non-manually. There is a little hint here about using the internet or something. If you can't figure out how to translate, the library is a great resource and it's free. I found some old reference books in the back covered in cobwebs. Is there some sort of playing card cipher? All right. Why don't we take a break since we've been playing for an hour and 13 minutes? We'll come back. If anyone has any ideas about how to decipher this, let me know. I'll see you in 8 minutes. All right, we're back. Got a bit of a dilemma here. We've got a coded message. It's been hinted at us by people who know, Debbie, who's worked on it, that this is too painful to try to manually decode. Then we got a letter that we had to respond in 5 minutes, which is unfortunate because we hadn't decoded this yet. And then Debbie has rather cryptically said, don't try to manually decode it. Just go online and do it, decode it online. But I don't know where to go to search for this. I've searched for deciphering codes using playing cards. They seem to be talking about different kinds of ciphers that don't look like this, that don't have 3 cards, but have an unlimited number of cards. So I can feel myself getting a little frustrated about this. Um, so I'm not like, I'm pulled in 2 different directions. My inclination would be to try to solve this code, but I'm being told by someone who knows, don't try to solve it, use an online tool, but I don't know what online tool to use. And it's always frustrating to try to use the online tools from the tablet. So I don't know what to tell you. It's also, we have to figure out what to put as it's also totally orthogonal to what our job today is, which is to make recommendations about what the police should do and stuff. So it's kind of hard to do it until we know what these messages say, because they might help us figure out what to do, but it's also making it hard to focus on what we're supposed to be doing. Uh, all right, let me just ignore the chat for a bit. That's the way I get frustrated, is by spending time on the chat sometimes. Looks to me like a substitution cipher. What else jumps out here? If I had to guess, I would just guess that it's a Caesar cipher, but different, but on triplets. Any hint that that's true or false? Let's just worry about let's just experiment on this first word, maybe, or I guess it would be easier to experiment on a 3-letter word like FRT, but then we don't know what the offset is, but we do know with the beginning. All right, let's just look at our first word here. So if we write our first word here, ZIXFSYH, sure would rather not have to figure out the king stuff. Okay, let's do it. Let's do this. let's take a look at this thing. So if we've got 3, 3, 10, and a 3-letter word here, U, G, Y. Okay. So if it's right that they repeat, then this is a 3, this is a 3, and this is a 10, if that's what's happening here. So let's see if we can make that go with the Caesar cipher type thing. So if our U is going +3, 1, 2, 3, the U would go to an X, and the G would go to a J. So that doesn't work at all. What if it's backwards? 1, 2, 3. Then the U would go to an R and the G would go to a D. That doesn't work. So it's not a simple Caesar cipher shift with those numbers. Then what is it? Is it rearranging letters? No, it certainly doesn't seem like it. These don't look, well, let's see. If you look at this, an E should be the most common letter, and it is still very common here. Not as common as it should be, though. Too many consonants. I feel like I some bad thing that happens when I get frustrated. I get like, there's some study of animals. Animals get angry, they lash out at whoever's nearby. I feel like I'm just lashing out at the channel, but I don't know what. It's like I'm trying to punish the channel by not looking at it. No. All right, let's think about this. 3, 3, 10, ace, jack. Whenever you get like a triplet like this, does make you think about book codes. So like fourth entry, fifth word, 3, 3, 10, third, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, this is clearly translating of each sentence gets translated. Look at these 3 U's in a row. What the? That makes you think it's some non. That does make you think, like, you don't have a word that's got 3 of the same letters in a row. U. That makes you think that this is not using a simple substitution cipher, but rather one that changes. Could be changing every word though, or every letter. No, it couldn't be changing every word, because you've got to get something different here. Hmm. Okay, hold on. If this is the word the, it's a 3-letter word. TH, look at that. TUGH. That seems fishy. This is a -1 +1. This be a -1? WX. How do you get an E? Y, distance between a Y and an E is what? 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Or 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. What if that is the word U, Y-O-U? We would get from a U to a Y +4, not a +3. What phrase starts with a something something comma? All right, try to do what I try to do in these cases. Don't try to solve it, just try to think through it. What do we observe? What do we observe? We've got English punctuation. Very much seems like we should change each letter to another letter, and then we'll get a message that is compatible with English grammar. Given that, it feels like we should be able to guess what some of these words are. It's not that often that you would have two words and then a comma. But okay, that's first observation. Second observation, we've got 3 keys for each message, it seems like. My gut instinct is that it's a repeating pattern of keys. Like the 4 is work on the Z, the 5 works on the I, the king works on the X, and then the 4, 5, king, 4, 5, king. But there's no reason that has to be the case. This is good. It's good for Matt to see how difficult this is. Well, for me at least. Okay. Next observation that feels important to me is whether these look like different patterns. The problem is that with the 3 repeating, you've basically got 3 mixture of 3 different codes. So it seems it's going to be hard to pick out patterns here. But I guess if you're just looking for clues, right? There's a serious clue that this idea of this is right, because a U can't go to the same letter each time. Like these U's have to go different because you're not going to have a 3 letters of the same thing. So whatever rule affects this U, a different rules affecting this U and a different rules affecting this U. So that you get 3 letters. That makes it all, it's suddenly a difficult cipher. It's not just a substitution cipher. Seems weird that it's so hard to make it that the obvious thing feels like it's just a Caesar cipher shift 3310, but it just doesn't work. What if it goes backwards? 1, 2, 3. R for the first word, but then the G should be another 3, which doesn't work there. But what if it's like, what if the first one, what if the first one, 1, 2, 3, it's surely not going to be X, but if it goes backwards 3, 1, 2, 3 is an R, then what if the G, J doesn't work, 1, 2, 3, D doesn't work. right, let's not try to solve it. It's, no, okay. Let's see, any observations about these pairs here? What if this is just all right, let's do some more observations. There's no word that's going to be inserting letters in here, so it's going to have to be changing these letters. We're not reading backwards. You can see the grammar makes sense, just decoding it. What do you think this exclamation point would be? If there's stock market tips, you might expect things to be like buy this, sell this. You might expect references to names of the people we know. A bunch of two-letter words, right? There aren't that many two-letter words. Me, too, as. What a two-letter word that ends a sentence. Two-letter pair. Let's see. To me. Well, this is tricky because normally this is a 1 hour session here and we haven't. Okay. I'm not going to look in the channel. I'm a little bit on tilt here. Let's pretend we don't have that. Let's come up with a basic reply. I'm trying to get back on track here and do the task we're supposed to do about solving the case, because I feel like I'm in danger of missing all of the stuff we're supposed to be focusing on. Okay. So Victor Hamoud is clearly not involved in anything. He gets a message from Dean Kimmel, who's reminding him to repurchase the stocks and sell them back. That's how you make a profit. This guy doesn't profit from any of this. This is just so Hamoud wouldn't lose his money. That makes me think that Dean Kimmel is a good guy. Don't know what Hamoud is about. Okay. They find the hardware store. They find the trench coat. All right, I'm sure the channel is angry at me not paying attention to it. I gotta get back on track here, but let me just What does Wiggins want from us? If you could summarize your findings in a letter, I'll pass it along. Okay, so that's our job now. We're not sending people to new places. We're just sending a reply of our thoughts. Okay, let me just try to write some of this. We may have to pick some of this up on offline in the Discord if you want to join for that. But I guess we're supposed to summarize our theory here is that Cunningham is the killed Hamoud's, at least in part, killed Hamoud's and is attempting to frame Michael Want. Motive is in part to get Mrs. Want. Evidence. So we expect to find possible fingerprints of Cunningham on Want's shoes. That's only a possible, which we claim he stole from Want house. Hardware store owner may be able to positively Cunningham as purchaser of the rope. We've got a laundry Pearl Street laundromat may be able to confirm that Cunningham brought in smoky jacket for dry cleaning. What else do we think we've got proof on him about? Okay, our second theory is that Cunningham was getting insider information from others on stock sales. He has a list of people, and so that brings us to this list. What do we make of this? Seems like a list of ways to manipulate people, though I don't understand the Yankee scores in the Times. Dentist, I don't really. All right, I'm going to try to be an adult and check in the chat here. Okay, let's forget about the decoding. Let's concentrate on the rest of our case. We don't have any good proof that Cunningham or anyone else is up to no good financially. I don't see how we're going to use this against him. I mean, this is suggestive that what? That he's keeping notes on... Okay. I'm going to put in here... Okay. We suspect... I'm going to just tell Wiggins all the stuff we don't have good evidence of. This is as much venting as anything else. I don't know what... we don't have proof Cunningham was involved in insider trading or that anyone else was. We suspect he might have been getting insider information from Margaret Leighton, but have no proof. We suspect Hamoud was involved with him, with Cunningham in some scheme, but have not been able to decode messages so far. We suspect that he killed Hamoud to cover up the financial crimes, as well as to frame want to get wife. Were others involved in financial scheme? The list of people to manipulate suggests not. But on the other hand, the problem with that theory is Hamoud is on this list. So I guess I gotta remove this because maybe that means all these people are involved. Is that what that means? That we should assume all of these people are involved in the scheme? They're either all involved or none in scheme. If I had to guess, maybe all 5 on the list are involved in the scheme. Or am I wasting my time here because it's all revealed in this message? I would suggest you take a break and schedule a short stream later, put the conclusion next week if you want. You really do need that code, yeah. All right, well, that's what we'll do here because I can feel I'm on tilt. Let's stop here. We'll figure out another time. Maybe we'll decode it offline on the Discord and have a separate stream once we decode the message rather than try to get it done in this stream. All right, we're going to sign off here. I'll see you on the next session. Keep your eyes tuned to the channel for when that's scheduled. We'll decode the message. Maybe it will make more sense then. I'll see you then.